She pretended to be asleep to learn the Apache sisters' intentions. The cowboy was stunned. The night arrived quietly over the ranch, the way it always did, slow, steady, and without drama. The land stretched wide under the open sky, where stars appeared one by one like silent watchers. The ranch had stood there for decades, built on patience, hard work, and memories that never fully faded. Every fence post, every worn path in the dirt carried a story. Some were spoken openly, others stayed buried, passed down through looks, habits, and unspoken rules. The woman had arrived earlier that day, carrying only a small bag and a heavier burden she did not speak about. She did not come with loud questions or expectations. She moved carefully, observing more than talking. Her eyes took in details most people missed: the way the wind shifted near the barn, the pause before someone answered a simple question, the way smiles sometimes reached mouths but not eyes. She was not weak, but she was tired. Life had taught her how to stay quiet when necessary and strong when needed. This ranch was meant to be a temporary stop, a place to rest and decide her next move. Still, from the moment she stepped onto the land, she felt something deeper pulling at her. The air felt heavy, not dangerous, but layered with history. The Apache sisters lived on the ranch with the cowboy. They were not just caretakers of the land, they were its guardians. The land had been in their family for generations, protected through struggle, patience, and loss. Outsiders often misunderstood them. Some thought their quiet nature meant distance. Others mistook caution for coldness. In truth, the sisters had learned long ago that trust was something earned slowly, not offered freely. They greeted the woman with polite warmth. Food was shared. A place to sleep was offered. No questions were asked that would make her uncomfortable. But beneath the kindness there was careful observation. The sisters watched how she spoke, how she worked, how she reacted when she thought no one was paying attention. The cowboy noticed it too. He had spent most of his life on that land. He knew its moods the way others knew their own heartbeat. He also knew the sisters well enough to sense when they were holding something back. They had welcomed people before, but never without reason. This time felt different. The woman helped where she could. She washed dishes without being asked. She carried water. She listened more than she spoke. She did not push for stories or explanations. That earned her quiet points, though no one said it aloud. As the sun lowered, shadows stretched across the ranch. The temperature cooled and the sounds of the day softened. Horses settled. Tools were put away. The sisters moved through their evening routine with practiced ease. The cowboy watched the woman from a distance, unsure what to make of her calm presence. Dinner passed with light conversation. Nothing personal, nothing deep, just enough words to fill the space. Afterward, the woman was shown to a small room near the back of the house. It was simple but clean. A bed, a small table, a window facing the open land. She thanked them and closed the door gently behind her. Inside the room, she sat on the edge of the bed and let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She felt safe, but not fully at ease. That feeling didn't come from fear. It came from awareness. The kind that tells a person something important is nearby, waiting to be noticed. She lay down, fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. The house creaked softly as it cooled. Somewhere outside, a night bird called. Time passed slowly. Then she heard it. Footsteps, soft. Careful, they were not rushed. Not careless. They belonged to people who knew the floor well and did not want to be heard. The woman's body went still, but her mind sharpened. She closed her eyes and slowed her breathing, letting it fall into the rhythm of sleep. She did not move. The door did not open. The footsteps stopped nearby. Quiet voices followed, low, measured, and serious. The Apache sisters believed she was asleep. Their words were not cruel. They were not angry. They were careful. They spoke about the land first. About the weight of responsibility. About what had been lost in the past and what could not be lost again. They spoke about outsiders who came with kind words but hidden intentions. about promises broken long before this ranch existed in its current form. The woman listened, her heart steady but alert. They spoke about her, not with judgment but with concern. They questioned why she had come, why she carried herself the way she did, why she avoided talking about her past. One sister wondered aloud whether pain made people honest or dangerous. Another said pain could also make people careful, like wounded animals. They were not planning harm. That became clear quickly. What they wanted was certainty, safety, assurance that the land, the home, and the people they loved would not be threatened. The woman understood more in those moments than she had all day. This was not suspicion born from dislike. It was protection shaped by experience. She remained still, every muscle relaxed, every breath even. Inside, emotions moved quietly, respect, sadness, understanding. She realized the sisters were not her obstacle, they were her mirror. The voices eventually faded. Footsteps moved away. She waited long after silence returned before opening her eyes. The ceiling looked the same as before, but everything else had changed. She did not feel offended. She did not feel angry. She felt trusted enough to be tested, and that mattered more than open smiles ever could. Outside, the cowboy stood alone for a moment, staring out at the land under the stars. He sensed something had shifted, though he could not yet name it. The ranch was quiet again, but beneath the calm, a turning point had begun. One that would challenge assumptions, test patience, and reveal truths no one expected. And in the small room at the back of the house, the woman closed her eyes for real this time, knowing the night had given her knowledge that would shape everything that followed. Morning came slowly to the ranch, carried in by pale light and the soft sounds of animals waking. The woman opened her eyes before the sun fully rose. For a moment she stayed still, listening. The house felt calm but different from the night before. What she had overheard still echoed in her mind, not as noise but as meaning. She did not feel fear. She felt clarity. She washed her face, tied her hair back, and stepped outside. The air was cool, clean, and honest. The land stretched out wide just as it had the day before, but now she understood it better. This place was not just soil and fences. It was memory. It was responsibility. One of the Apache sisters was already awake, preparing the morning fire. She looked up briefly, her eyes sharp but not unkind. The woman nodded in greeting, calm and respectful. No words were needed. Instead of waiting to be told what to do, the woman quietly joined the morning work. She carried wood. She swept dust from the steps. She stayed aware of her movements, making sure not to cross unspoken lines. She remembered the words she had heard in the night and let them guide her actions. The sisters noticed. They did not comment on it, but they noticed the change. The woman moved with intention now. She listened closely when spoken to. She did not interrupt. When she asked questions, they were thoughtful, never demanding. She showed interest in the land, not ownership over it. The cowboy watched from a distance. At first, he thought she was simply being polite. But as the hours passed, he realized something deeper was happening. She worked as if she understood the rhythm of the ranch already, as if she respected its rules without needing them explained. That unsettled him. He had seen many people pass through this place. Some came with charm, others with confidence. Most tried to prove something. The woman did none of that. She was quiet, steady, and observant. During breakfast, conversation stayed light. The sisters spoke to each other in short phrases, efficient and familiar. The woman listened, smiling occasionally, speaking only when spoken to. There was no tension at the table, but there was awareness. The cowboy finally asked her how she slept. Peacefully, she replied, meeting his eyes without hesitation. Her answer was true, but it carried more weight than he realized. As the day unfolded, the woman made a choice. She would not reveal what she had heard, not yet. Accusation would only close doors. Trust, she now knew, had to be earned on both sides. Instead, she chose action. She helped one of the sisters mend a fence. She asked about the land, not who owned it, but how it was cared for. She listened to stories of weather patterns, of years when the soil struggled, of times when strength had been tested. She did not interrupt. She did not try to relate everything back to herself. That mattered. The sister speaking noticed how carefully the woman listened, how she remembered details, how she asked permission before stepping into certain areas. Small things but important ones. By afternoon, the mood had shifted slightly. Not warm, not open, but softer. The woman felt it too. She sensed that eyes still followed her, but now with curiosity instead of doubt. The sisters spoke more freely around her, not fully open but no longer guarded. She understood this was progress. Later, as the sun leaned west, the cowboy approached her near the barn. "You're adjusting fast," he said. She smiled gently. "Some places ask you to slow down, others ask you to pay attention." He studied her for a moment. He wanted to ask more, but something held him back. Maybe it was the way she stood, grounded, respectful. Maybe it was the feeling that she already knew things he hadn't said. They worked in silence for a while. As evening approached, the air grew cooler. The sisters gathered near the house, discussing the day's work. The woman joined them but stayed on the edge of the group, careful not to insert herself too deeply. One of the sisters finally spoke to her directly. "You understand quiet," she said. The woman nodded. "Quiet teaches a lot." The sister held her gaze for a long moment, then gave a small nod in return. That simple exchange carried more meaning than a long conversation ever could. That night, the woman returned to her room with a different heart than the night before. She no longer felt like a guest under watch. She felt like a person being slowly weighed, not judged but measured. She lay down, not pretending this time. Sleep came easily. Elsewhere in the house, the sisters spoke again, but their tone had changed. There was less worry in their voices, less tension. They spoke about actions, not suspicions, about how the woman worked, how she listened, how she respected the land. The cowboy overheard fragments of the conversation, enough to confuse him. He realized then that something important had happened overnight, something he had not seen, something quiet but powerful. He felt both curious and unsettled. The woman was not who he had assumed she was, and that realization stayed with him long after the house went quiet again. Outside, the land rested under the stars, unchanged yet deeply aware. The ranch had begun another chapter, one shaped not by confrontation, but by patience, understanding, and the quiet strength of people choosing to listen before they speak. What had begun as watchfulness was slowly turning into something else, and none of them yet knew how deeply it would change them all. The third day on the ranch began with heavier air, not heavy in weather but in feeling. The woman sensed it the moment she stepped outside. Something was shifting again. The quiet was still there, but it carried questions now, not just observation. She had slept well, yet she woke with purpose. The words she had heard 2 nights ago were no longer just thoughts in her mind. They had shaped her choices, and now they were shaping the attention around her. She knew the sisters were watching more closely, not to find fault but to understand her nature. She welcomed that. After breakfast, one of the Apache sisters asked her to help organize old supplies stored behind the main barn. It was not heavy work, but it was personal. Those supplies held years of careful saving, tools repaired instead of replaced, materials kept just in case. Being allowed near them meant something. The woman accepted without hesitation. As they worked side by side, dust floating in the sunlight, the woman noticed how the sister handled each item with care. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was careless. The woman followed the same rhythm. When she was unsure, she asked before touching anything. When she finished a task, she waited instead of assuming what came next. Time passed quietly. Eventually, the sister spoke. Not suddenly, not emotionally, just honestly. "You've been hurt before," she said, not as a question. The woman paused, then nodded. "Yes." "By people who smiled first," the sister added. "Yes," the woman replied again. That was all that was said for a long moment. The truth did not need more words. They continued working, but something had changed. The air felt lighter. The sister's posture relaxed slightly. The woman felt it too. A door had opened, not wide but enough to let light through. Later that afternoon, the woman chose to speak, not about the night she had overheard, but about herself. She shared small truths, where she had grown up, why she valued quiet, why she believed listening was more powerful than speaking. She did not share pain for sympathy. She shared it for clarity. The sisters listened. The cowboy watched from across the yard, feeling the distance between them shrinking. He had never seen the sisters open up to someone so quickly, yet it was happening without effort, without force. He began to realize that the woman was not trying to fit in. She was simply being consistent. That consistency unsettled him more than conflict ever would have. In the late afternoon, something unexpected happened. One of the younger ranch hands made an offhand comment, nothing sharp but careless enough to touch old wounds. The air froze instantly. The sisters went still. The cowboy turned, ready to step in. Before anyone could speak, the woman calmly addressed it. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse. She explained. She spoke about respect, about how words carry weight even when spoken without intent. She spoke from a place of understanding, not correction. Her tone was steady, her posture open. The ranch hand listened, then nodded, apologized. The moment passed, but it left a mark. The sisters exchanged a glance. This time there was no doubt in their eyes. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the land gold, the oldest sister invited the woman to sit with them near the fire. No task attached, no work needed, just presence. They talked about the land again, about storms survived, about seasons that tested patience, about people who came and went. Then the woman did something important. She acknowledged their caution. She spoke about how she understood why they watched her, why they spoke carefully, why protection mattered more than comfort. She did not say how she knew, she simply said she respected it. The sisters listened in silence. Finally, one of them spoke. "Not everyone understands why we guard what is ours," she said. "I do," the woman replied. "Some things don't survive without guarding." That was the moment trust crossed its first real line. Not full trust, not blind trust, but earned trust. Later that night, the cowboy stood alone with the woman near the fence line. The sky above them was wide and quiet. "You're changing things here," he said. "I'm not trying to," she replied. "I'm just being honest." He looked at her, truly looked, for the first time. He realized how wrong his early assumptions had been. He had thought strength meant taking control. He was learning now that strength could also mean restraint. Inside the house, the sisters talked openly that night. Not about testing anymore, but about choice. About how the woman had responded, not with fear, not with anger, but with respect. They agreed on something without needing to say it out loud. She could stay. The land, quiet as ever, seemed to breathe easier under the stars. The ranch was no longer just observing the woman. It was beginning to accept her. And the woman, lying in her room once again, felt something she had not felt in a long time. Belonging, not claimed, not demanded, but slowly earned. She closed her eyes, knowing the hardest part was still ahead. Because trust, once given, carried responsibility, and she was ready to carry it. The fourth day began with movement and noise, a sharp contrast to the quiet mornings before it. Trucks arrived earlier than usual. Dust rose in the air. Voices carried across the yard. Something important was happening, and everyone on the ranch felt it. The woman stepped outside and immediately sensed the change. The calm she had grown used to was still there, but it was under pressure now. She could feel tension moving through the land like a slow current. The cowboy was already speaking with two visitors near the fence. They were not strangers, but they were not close either. People from nearby land who had opinions, expectations, and unfinished business. The woman did not know their history, but she recognized the tone. It was the sound of boundaries being tested. The Apache sisters stood near the house, watching carefully. Their posture was alert, protective. This was their land, and moments like this reminded them why caution had always been necessary. The woman stayed back at first. She understood when presence helped and when it did not. She focused on small tasks, staying useful without being visible. But as the conversation grew louder, she noticed something important. The visitors were not listening. They spoke over the cowboy. They dismissed concerns. They referred to the land as if it were open for discussion, not guarded by history or care. Their words were not cruel but careless. And carelessness, the woman had learned, could cause more damage than open conflict. One of the sisters stepped forward, her voice firm but controlled. She explained the situation clearly, calmly. She spoke of agreements, of boundaries, of respect. The visitors responded with impatience. The cowboy shifted uncomfortably. He wanted to defend the sisters, but he was caught between maintaining peace and protecting what mattered. The tension tightened. The woman watched closely. This was the moment she had been preparing for without knowing it. She stepped forward, not to challenge, but to clarify. She spoke slowly, choosing words with care. She did not claim authority. She did not take sides. Instead, she reframed the conversation. She explained the value of the land not as property but as responsibility. She spoke of how trust was built through respect, not pressure. Her voice was steady. Her tone was calm. The effect was immediate. The visitors paused, not because they were defeated but because they were finally being heard and asked to hear in return. The cowboy looked at her in surprise. He had not expected her to step into the middle of it. He had not realized how deeply she understood the situation. In that moment, he saw her not as a guest, but as someone grounded enough to stand when it mattered. The conversation shifted. It did not end perfectly. Agreements were not suddenly reached, but the tension softened. Voices lowered. Boundaries were acknowledged. When the visitors finally left, the ranch exhaled. The sisters did not speak right away. They did not need to. Their eyes said enough. Later that day, one of the sisters approached the woman privately. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I wanted to," the woman replied. "This place matters." The sister nodded slowly. That simple exchange sealed something important. The cowboy struggled with his thoughts the rest of the day. He felt admiration, yes, but also discomfort. He realized how often he had relied on routine instead of awareness, how easily he had underestimated quiet strength. That evening, he finally spoke honestly. "I thought I was protecting this place," he said to the woman as they walked near the edge of the land. "But I see now I was only managing it." She smiled gently. Protection and management are different things. He considered that long after she finished speaking. Inside the house, the sisters discussed the day openly. They spoke about how the woman had acted, not with impulse, not with fear, but with balance. They spoke about trust again, but this time without hesitation. "She understands what's at stake," one sister said. "And she respects it," another added. That night, the woman did not feel like someone being watched anymore. She felt like someone being counted on. But with that feeling came weight. She knew that stepping into moments like today changed how people saw her. Expectations followed, responsibility followed, and she accepted that fully. Outside, the land rested again, but it was not the same. Something had been strengthened, not fences, not agreements, but understanding. The cowboy stood under the open sky that night, replaying the day in his mind. He realized he had been stunned not by what the woman said, but by how she said it. Calm, clear, unafraid. He understood then that trust was no longer a question of if, but of how much. And that realization changed him. The ranch, shaped by generations of quiet strength, had found another guardian, not by blood, not by claim, but by choice. The woman returned to her room, aware that the final test was still ahead. Because true belonging was not proven in moments of calm, but in what followed. And whatever came next, she would face it honestly. The final days on the ranch did not arrive with drama or noise. They came quietly, the way important endings often do. The woman felt it in small moments. The way people spoke to her without hesitation, the way her presence no longer caused pauses, the way the land itself seemed familiar now, not distant. She woke early, as she always had since arriving. Morning light spread slowly across the open fields. The air was cool, steady, and calm. She stepped outside and stood still for a moment, taking it all in. This place no longer felt temporary. The Apache sisters were already awake, moving through their routines with ease. One of them handed the woman a cup of warm drink without asking. The gesture was simple, but it carried meaning. She accepted it with quiet gratitude. There was work to be done that day, but it was different work. Not fixing or guarding, preparing. A small gathering was expected later in the afternoon. Neighbors, friends, people connected to the land in quiet ways, nothing formal, just a shared meal, shared time. The kind of gathering that said more than words ever could. The woman helped prepare without direction. She knew where things were now. She knew what needed to be done. The sisters noticed, exchanging brief looks that held understanding. The cowboy watched her as well, not with curiosity anymore, but with respect. He no longer questioned her place there. He only wondered how he had missed her strength at the beginning. As the day unfolded, the woman reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. She remembered the night she pretended to sleep, the careful voices, the quiet testing. None of it felt distant now. It felt necessary. Trust had not been given freely. It had been earned through patience, restraint, and choice. By midday, people began to arrive. Vehicles parked along the edges of the land. Familiar faces stepped out, greeting the sisters warmly. The woman stayed slightly behind at first, allowing the sisters to lead. She knew when to step forward and when not to, but something unexpected happened. One of the elders approached her directly. Someone who carried long memory in their eyes, someone who did not speak lightly. "You stayed," the elder said simply. "Yes," the woman replied. "That matters," the elder said, then nodded and moved on. The woman felt the weight of that moment settle deep within her. During the gathering, laughter mixed with quiet conversation. Stories were shared. Food passed from hand to hand. The land felt alive in a way it hadn't before, not loud but full. At one point, the cowboy found himself standing beside the woman near the edge of the group. "I was stunned," he admitted quietly. "Not by one moment, by all of them," she smiled. "So was I," he looked out over the land. "I thought strength meant standing in front. I was wrong." She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Sometimes strength means standing still." He nodded slowly, understanding settling in. As the afternoon faded into evening, the sisters gathered everyone for a brief moment. No speeches, no announcements, just acknowledgement. They spoke about community, about care, about how the land survived because people chose to protect it together. Then one of them looked at the woman. She did not introduce her. She did not explain her presence. She simply said, "She belongs here." That was all. The words landed softly, but they carried everything. The woman felt emotion rise, but she did not show it. She met the sisters' gaze and nodded, honoring the trust without turning it into spectacle. As night fell, the gathering slowly dispersed. Vehicles left. Voices faded. The ranch returned to its quiet state, but it was a different quiet now, a settled one. Later, the woman walked alone along the familiar fence line. The stars above were clear and steady. She thought about the life she had lived before arriving here, the places where she had been unseen, the moments where silence had been survival, not choice. This silence was different. This silence was peace. The cowboy joined her after a while. They stood side by side, not speaking. They didn't need to. "I won't pretend I understand everything," he finally said. "But I know this place is better because you're here." She considered his words carefully. "I'm better because this place exists," she replied. Inside the house, the sisters talked quietly, not about protection anymore, not about testing. They spoke about future seasons, about shared responsibility, about balance. They had chosen well. When the woman returned to her room that night, she did not feel like it was a guest space anymore. It felt like her own. She sat on the bed and let the stillness settle around her. She thought about the choice she had made, to listen instead of react, to stay instead of leave, to understand instead of assume. None of it had been easy. All of it had been worth it. The ranch had changed her, but she had changed it too, not by force, not by demand, but by presence. Outside, the land rested under the stars, protected not by fences alone, but by people who understood its value. And somewhere between quiet nights and honest days, the woman had found what she hadn't been searching for, but had needed all along. A place where trust was earned. A place where silence was respected. A place where she no longer had to pretend.